When I talk about people that are inside and going to Ottawa and behind closed doors, what I'm hearing is this guy's running it like a business. He's running tough meetings. He doesn't like people to be late. He's like very different from the past administration. So I'm feeling warm about those kind of what I'm hearing, but the jury's out. Will he do the right things? Will he be tougher on this? Will he do what our country really needs? Because we just found out in the past 6 months, a year, that we are having vulnerable underbelly. We're only 9 months into a 4-year presidency, and a lot of bad things can happen to us, and will, if we don't get our act together.
All right, John, welcome back to the tank here. We got a special guest with us, Mr. Michael Hyatt. Michael, how you doing?
Good. Nice to be here with you,
I don't know how John raped you into this, but we got you here and we're not going to let go.
Oh.
We got some big news coming out of Prime Minister Mark Carney's office to kick things off. The fall budget will be announced in October, as we talked about, John. And it's got a little bit of things that we also talked about, the blend of austerity and investment, also criticizing a bit of Trudeau-era's federal spending that will be obviously cut, which we know, but we don't know where it's going to be cut, because finance minister has some big, tough choices to make in the fall budget. And there's a lot of plans going around, but I guess maybe I'll kick things off with you, Michael. You know, how much do you think we'll see out of this operational budget, and where we'll see some of the deficits come? You know, we've got military and infrastructure that we need to, feed money into, and we aren't seeing any cuts to things like healthcare and education or transfer payments. So what do you think this fall budget will hold in stock for everyone?
So it's a bit, I guess, funny in an ironic way. You wonder, well, how did we get here? Who did this? You know, and then you think back the past decade. It's a bit of a lost decade for Canada, right? Where we could have done a lot more things. We could have had high-speed rail by now. We could have had better infrastructure. We could have been trading with provinces. We could have had pipelines moving stuff. We could have had more integrated trading with India and China and the EU. But coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? And now we're in the situation where I think we had to step back and think about, this exogenous shock that we just had, where U.S. says, maybe we're not your best friend always, right? And now we're stuck in the situation where in 10 years, we've doubled our debt. We increased the size of the federal government 40%. But then I ask people one simple question, which is, what did we get for that? I mean, you call CRA or anybody else, did you get better service? Did you get through? Did we get more for that money, for that extra 1.2 trillion? And so Carney comes in, who I think is a much more measured person. I mean, I've been very public about not being supportive of the last regime, and I was very, very tough on them. And I think that's very valid. But I think he's come in, and I think he's much more of a business person, and he's looking around the room and he says, wow, this is, let's be honest, this prime minister has a very tough road ahead of him for the next couple of years. If I was him, I would be coming in like the new CEO of a company, and I would basically start with the toughest, worst budget I've ever come out with. It's really early. It's time when everybody expects it. I think it should be relatively ugly and very honest and very transparent. We haven't seen that in years. And I think we should have a bit of a truth and reconciliation of our numbers, and they're going to be pretty ugly. And I think that, we're going to have to do everything from cutting the size of the federal government to not spending more. And I'll just lastly end up on this. What's really interesting is if you just stop a bunch of Canadians on the street and say, do you think we should cut spending? Every one of them wants people, yeah, we need to reel in spending. Great. And then you say, where? Well, not anything not from healthcare, not from the stuff that I use. And they always push it. And then eventually everybody always comes up with the same answer, is get rid of defense, right? It's always pushed off to something like that, where it doesn't hit them daily in their day. But at the end of the day, the situation is that I think that if Canada, which is a minor currency, a minor global economy, we are 1%, 2% of the global economy. We're the size of California and GDP. We have to think about ourselves that we don't have a reserve currency. We can't just print money into infinitum. And we have to think about it very, very carefully. And I think that I'm hoping actually he comes out with a very tough budget and really presents the really ugly numbers. And that's what I would do if I were him. I'm not sure they're going to be that clear about it. But I think he's much more of a business person, and I think he knows what he's doing. And I think my view on Carney is this, and I think the business community is this, is like, okay, we'll give you a chance. We all want you to be successful, but let's see what you do. Let's see if you actually do the things that need to have happen to put our country back on the right path. Because clearly we haven't been on the right path for a long time. Productivity sucked. We've lagged the G7. We pumped up our debt. We didn't get a lot for it. We had these silly tricks over Christmas about GST and things like that. But I think now it's time to have a, like the movie The Hangover, when you wake up and you have Mike Tyson and a tiger in the room. I think that's what we're doing, right? We're waking up and we're finding Mike Tyson and a tiger in our room, and we're like, it's a pretty crazy, messed up apartment with a lot of stuff that needs to be cleaned up. And I think that we can
Mike
do
Tyson is Donald Trump and the tiger is the global economy. But like, Michael, like what you're saying makes sense. Like zero-based budgeting maybe is what they could come out with.
Sure, as a business person, I'd love that, but that's not going to be
never going to happen. Never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. But I do think what I am hearing, I'm not sure if you gents are hearing this too, when I talk about people that are inside and going to Ottawa and behind closed doors, what I'm hearing is, this guy's running it like a business. He's running tough meetings. He doesn't like people to be late. He's like very different from the past administration. So I'm feeling warm about those kind of what I'm hearing. But the jury's out. Will he do the right things? Will he be tougher on this? Will he do what our country really needs? Because listen, we just found out in the past 6 months, a year, that we are having vulnerable underground. We're only 9 months into a 4-year presidency, and a lot of bad things can happen to us, and will, if we don't get our act together. We're on our own, and there are no Calvary, and so we better get our act together. Yeah,
we take a lot for granted, that's for sure.
We have taken a lot for granted because every president has given us a hall pass. Yeah, you're Canada. We love you. You guys, they never really thought about us much. They were like, yeah, come on now. Yeah, come on. You're the nice guys. And they were off doing what they were doing. But now we're a target of concern. I think a lot of countries are. And we're on our own. And but we happen to have the largest undefended border with the largest country in the world and the biggest economy in the world. And we have to rectify our situation. I think that, it's simply one of the reasons why you don't do an investment, because you have this client concentration, right? And it's this idea that we have 80% client concentration, and we have to be very wary of that.
Oh, John, I mean, that's a lot of gaps that you got to fill or steel man against. But what do you think is happening? Because they're trickling a lot of stuff out to the media, which makes me think that they are going to announce some pretty drastic things if they're giving it out now.
Being on a little bit more on the cynical front, none of this is new information. Nat, you and I don't know how many of our podcasts, I wrote an op-ed on this back in October of last year. So 12 months ago, the number one thing being austerity, and we basically had to cut our budget by $40 billion at minimum, based on a $440 million total budget. Matt and I had many podcasts and discussions that, using the term a Doge-like review, not Doge, but a Canadian version, the number of people in the elbows up crowd that vehemently thought that was a horrible idea and utter nonsense. And the Liberals campaigned that was not necessary. And now that they're and again, not caring which party has what policies, but that's not what the public voted them on, and voted them on basically not changing anything on trade, like we had a voice in that matter. And that election was in April, and only a few months later, are we now talking of more extreme Doge-like austerity beyond the 10% that I was even suggesting. It's now up to 15% on average, and a realization, what is not surprising, that it didn't matter who was in power, was not going to achieve any trade special concessions. And frankly, we started off on a very retaliatory measure, found ourselves isolated. So, the tough part now is, how do you, in such a short period of time, retreat to almost the opposite end of that spectrum, probably contrary to why a lot of people voted for you? So I gotta, this is a very difficult situation that Carney has got himself in. And you're absolutely right. Guy is no question on his business acumen, etc. But he's got a political issue on his hand. And they've backed themselves in a corner because the first few things that they did was promising more spending, like housing, etc. And Matt and I were like,
That's right.
you're going the wrong way. Let's use John Candy. That you're going against the traffic, and yet I hope we realize. The last thing I will just say is, and you touched on it, Michael, we are 3 tech digital people. We know that's the future. However, if I needed to move the needle, it has to be on resources. It's a shame. We got ourselves in this position. And what's a little frustrating, and I love all the things that Tim Hodgson is saying, but everything is still subject to environmental concerns, indigenous rights. Folks, the house is on fire. Pick the 5 biggest projects that have been trying to get approved for the last decade and say, boom, they're approved and go, go, go. And enough of these consultations. I think that's what I hope to see on this budget, because I think we're running out of time here, and exactly what you said. And I'm not going to just blame it in the last decade. This has been 3 decades of decline, but the most rapid and obvious one has been the last decade.
Well, here, let me ask you a question, both of you. Will this be a cut budget or a growth-focused budget, right? You can grow your way out of a deficit, or you can try and cut your way back to break even. And they're not going to cut healthcare. They're not going to cut education.
It's not their responsibility.
They can't cut individual payments or, all the public services. They may adjust, like the staffing changes. They're saying with tech and efficiency, okay, like that's not going to move the needle. They're going to stop paying Deloitte and the Big Four, maybe as much as they used to be paying, but it's not going to move the needle. So where is it going to come if they haven't figured it out on the cut side? They got to grow out of this.
No, when we were doing calculations of where the cuts were now, we didn't have all the data. We did come up with $40 billion of cuts. It came through civil service cuts. It comes through, there's a number of our spending. For example, OAS, we have people who are non-Canadians that still get old age security. There's lots of grift into the system that we just not done this detailed review. And the best review that was done was 1994-95 when John Critchin and Paul Martin did this. And they went through department by department, and it was a stunning success. Very painful, but you got to do it. And the question is, do you have the political will? And this is a political will question. We could do it. But do we really want to do it? Because I don't think we're focusing on growth, because the growth shows up a number of quarters and years from now. And I think that what you needed to do was create the conditions to give you the room to make some of the investments that we need to make, whether it's dual use and all those sorts of things.
The OAS is projected to hit $100 billion in 2028.
Unbelievable.
Michael, what do you think?
I think that you're going to find out very quickly. I think what really the truth of this budget is, and I'll quote Warren Buffett when he says, somebody asked him what he wants to come back as the next lifetime, and he said the bond market, or I think he said compound interest. But the interesting thing about the bond market is the truth teller. So Carney comes out and he announces his austerity, his cuts, which he's going to. He's going to have to say, listen, and they've already started floating ideas that we overspend, and we're going to have to get back to a better, and they're going to do this through, not necessarily laying off a lot of people in the federal government, just not replacing them and letting it trickle down and getting the numbers in control. And if that story sells and sells enough and sells properly, you're going to find the bond market will react to it. If it doesn't, the most extreme version of that didn't work was when Liz Truss came Prime Minister in England. She comes in, she gets this tax cut, the bond market went crazy, and she essentially got fired very quickly for it, right? So in this case, I don't think anything like that will happen. I think that what will happen is the bond market will react to the budget and tell and tell essentially Canada what it thinks of its fiscal budget. But for example, even the idea that the U.S. may have to pay back a bunch of tariffs, including the Supreme Court, took that on recently. So it will react. It is the truth serum, and we're going to find out. I would like to see him have a huge, coming to the truth party of really where the books are. I'm not sure they're going to do it because they have to blame themselves. It would have been a lot easier if the previous administration was a different party, but they're almost treating it like it was a different party, which is not a bad thing. But I think that Canadians need to, I don't think Canadians in general are really addicted to really cheap money. I don't know what you guys think about this, but I've said this a few times. To get your take on this, maybe we just move it over to tech for a second. I thought that people that were becoming a CEO for the first time in a tech company between 2010 and 2020 have been really bamboozled, right? Because you think that 0% interest rates is just normal. And you hear things like, oh, I got a mortgage, it was 1.9. That was very high. And you like things that come out of their mouth for over a decade, like interest rates never going to go up. There's always going to be another round. 0% interest rates are normal. Money's going to be cheap and printed forever until it's not. And I think Canadians are relatively addicted to tons of spending and very low interest rates. And I think that that environment was fictitious. It was artificial. Yeah. It was forced. All of this stuff was mechanical. It was, a lot of stuff that started in 2009 to save the economy. We got addicted to this printing and absorbing the bonds and, quantitative easing and job owning and all the rest of the things they were doing. And now we don't have that. And the market is going to start paying for it. And you look at our housing sector now, look at things that are starting to become real. And the interesting thing about the situation Canadians are in today is the average Canadian would probably tell you today the interest rates are really high. And they're wrong. They're wrong because all we've done is reverted to the mean. And every time, if you just take a look since World War II, we all revert to the mean and we're just reverted to the mean. Like we're actually under the mean. We're actually kind of averages, the 10 years around 4 or 5%. That is the mean since 1945. And people don't feel good at the mean. They feel it's extremely high. So I don't think we have a society conditioned to these interest rates that are reverted to the mean, nor do we have politicians that want to say anything but spend, spend, spend. And by the way, in America, they have a debt and a deficit that is out of control, and no party is ever rein that in. I mean, you hear them, the Republicans going on about how terrible the debt is when they're out of power. When they're in power, they're like, we don't want to talk about it. I mean, this is how we all react to it, right? But Canada isn't the reserve currency. It isn't the largest economy in the world. It doesn't, tails don't wag dogs. We have to actually turn the business around. So I think we'll know within 48 hours or 24 hours if him announcing the budget and Walmart that thinks of it. And I also think that he should, if I was advising him, and he'll never listen to me, and I'm not, is that he should basically come out and tell the biggest, baddest story. Because he's at the bottom. He's in the very beginning of the administration. You're at the bottom, admit all the faults, and then build it back up. I mean, you just became CEO of a company. You should tell your shareholders it's terrible. And then you've seen this a million times in the public markets, right? And they build back up. Take the bonk on the head now. That's what I would tell him. You don't want to take it in 3 years. But will he do it? Probably a little bonk, but not a big enough. That's I think.
You want to be like the John Foley of Canada, the guy who came in to fix Peloton.
Oh yes,
Chipotle and that stuff, right? Wasn't that John Foley?
Yeah,
But a business is not a country, right? There's a lot more going on, and there's so much more happening here. And I think that I wish we would start doing the right things. I mean, elbows up and all this talk, and I still bump into Canadians like I'm not going to visit the U.S. and all this stuff, and I think we're getting it all wrong, right? And I do think so far Carney is playing game theory correctly by actually turning off the tariffs right now and cooling the meter with the U.S. The U.S. is reacting well to us, but that's only half the story of the tariffs. That's not really our biggest problem. Our own house has been on fire, right? Our fiscal house is not in order. We have very few clients. And you said it, John, like I keep telling people, the Canadian currency is a petrodollar. we're still a petrodollar. We're not a AI dollar or whatever you want to talk.
Hey,
We're not,
Michael,
yeah.
I made a prediction that in 10 years there may not be a Canadian
Well,
dollar. John told me I was the biggest idiot. And
I didn't say that. I said,
hopefully
I
it'll
hope
never
you're
happen.
wrong.
I know. But I hope I'm wrong too. But, Michael's saying what I'm thinking too, which is that we're not a
I
reserve
think there'll be a
currency.
Canadian
Yeah.
dollar because I think eventually we'll do the right thing and turn this thing around. But, when I hear that the last administration announces a high-speed rail from Toronto to Montreal, but it's going to take 10 years, and said, you could have started that 10 years ago. While we're all doing this and doing all this silly stuff, I just want to say that in China, they're just plowing forward with high-speed rail and nuclear and everything really quickly, and they're building shipyards, ports, funding shipyards and ports around the world. They're doing all the infrastructure and they're just they're nice and quiet and doing their job, right? That's what's happening over there. And we're debating it's going to take 10 years to put in this and that. We're falling behind, right? I mean, North America has no high-speed rail. You land in Japan, you're into Tokyo and now on a bullet train, right? So we're lagging behind a lot of infrastructure of some other countries. I would think that's pretty concerning.
Yeah. Anything that you want to add on this, John, before we move on to some tech stuff?
No, when you move on to that.
I'm just super excited to hear that Google's not being forced to break up. I think this is tremendous, actually, to hear that they're not being forced. But there was some considerations that were put on them. So for people who are aware, the Department of Justice, was pushing to divest Google's Chrome and Android, and calling it overreach, basically. But they basically said they can't have an exclusive search distribution deals anymore, but we're allowing to have non-exclusive, payments, like the $20 billion that Google paid to Apple. So huge win for Google, maybe not so good for Perplexity, who wanted to buy Chrome with their crazy bid. Stock obviously jumped 6-7% for Google. What are your thoughts here, John? Obviously, Chrome people are probably happy or not, but DuckDuckGo probably not so happy. Some of the other players not. Does this ruling kind of make a threat to the AI companies that were hoping to take down Google, make it a little bit harder?
Well, first of all, what I like about the ruling is that when, and in digital, it's a little bit different. In the historically, when you have a monopoly, they were typically government granted. In the digital world, it could be formed because so many of these are winner take alls. And what was interesting here, the thing that swayed the judge the most was the potentially precarious position of search and the advertising revenue associated with search. And Matt, you and I talked about this. When I'm searching now, like 80+% of my time, it's now using an LLM. And those are eyeballs that have now disappeared off of advertising revenues. And so this is the first time where the idea of Google search is a big question mark. And I watch my kids, they do not use Google search whatsoever. So the judge is actually saying, and this was interesting, historically, they would look at the competition at the time that the lawsuit was issued, not today. And this judge actually made a comment saying, I'm looking as of today, and maybe I would have thought of this differently 2 years ago. So that
it's almost like ChatGPT saved them.
He did it, but it was I thought that was a great thinking on how to look at this.
Michael, what do you think on this?
There's no
Time
need to,
saved them.
There's no need to break up Google. I don't think it's so funny. I never thought it. This is so wrong in about predictions. I never thought there'd be a day where I'd say maybe Google's in trouble. I was like impossible. Like they have so much. But I'm saying now that whole business model is. What I love about Jeff Bezos, he made this statement years ago. He said, "Yeah, one day Amazon's going to go bankrupt. Maybe 50 years from now, 100 years from now." But he understands the finality of his own company, and we can't see it. We're not good at seeing things exponentially forward. And by the way, when I Google now and I press their AI mode, it's really good. And by the way, VO3, it's really good. And a lot of stuff that Google's doing is really good. And even though it's really good, people are still using ChatGPT and other things, right? So I don't think they're like lacking somehow. They're just, it's interesting. What we learned about AI early is that if you are 3 months behind, you might be 30 years behind. That's how fast this thing's going. I don't think you never need to break up Google, because Google could literally find itself in a tailspin very, very quickly in this model. I mean, there's two big predictions by 2030. Now, I'm a part of something called the Creative Destruction Lab at U of T. And if you date back, like, we're talking like the genesis of where Jeff Hinton and all these people came from, right? Back in like 2015, 2014, 2013. And I was there. And they would make predictions 5 years later. And they all sounded kooky. And what the kooky thing is that every time they make a prediction 5 years, they're always right. So now I'm thinking like there is some kooky. But what I will tell you is that those changes are very, very quick. And the other thing I'll tell you is that this is the fastest 5 years that we think is ever going to happen. And this is the two predictions that are coming out right now. And this is what it means for Google. Two things should come out by 2031, some type of superintelligence. And number two, some type of legitimate quantum computing. Maybe that's combined, maybe that's together, but we're talking 2027, 2028. When I started the Creative Destruction Lab, and I used to see Hinton and all these guys in 2012, 2013, 2014, none of us, they had a better view than we did. But our view was 2060 to 2070, this stuff, and maybe we won't live to see it. Then it was like 2035, and now it's like 2027, right? So we don't see things coming. We're not good at seeing things coming. But what I will tell your listeners right now, there'll be some type of superpower and powerful intelligence before 2030. And we don't know what that means. And I don't know what it means for Google. What I do know is those chaps are very, very clever, and they'll probably find their way to acquiring or staying there. But I don't think they need to be broken up, because I don't think they're going to own 99% of the search. There's just no
absolutely
way.
agree. I think also that Mark Benioff and others who are at the sort of app level or at the incumbent level, they're already trying to disrupt themselves before an AI startup tries to disrupt them. So they're well aware of what's coming down the pipe to break them up from like the challengers. And they're already doing it to themselves. Mark Benioff said it himself, right? You know, they had 100 million calls of lead customers that they had never been able to call back to, because they just didn't have the human beings to do it. Now they have agentic, SDRs that are going out and making those calls. Well, that's probably going to replace a lot of their SDRs they have on staff. He already took out 4,000 of his customer service call reps and maybe didn't repurpose all of them. But I have a question for you, Michael. This MIT study that came out the other week about how, it claimed that 95% of corporate AI efforts have failed to boost profits, with only 5% reaching production. This was a survey they did on 52 unnamed firms. And there's a kind of conversation around, well, if there's $18.5 billion in annualized revenue that has been generated under 3 years by the top, hyperscalers, the large language providers, you're talking about obviously OpenAI and Anthropic taking a big chunk of that beyond obviously X and Cursor and the others. Is this a shadow economy that has like basically an unofficial workforce behind it? And so they're not really taking into a fact that there's not actually people doing a lot of this work. Therefore, they can't track the benefits, and the profits that they're seeing may take some time to actually trickle through to the bottom line.
I think this is Barron's 1999 front cover of Barron's.
Agreed. I
think
the
front cover of Barron's was "The Internet is dead," or "Amazon is dead," or "It's all over." And it's true, because when I saw the internet in the 90s, and John remembers it and I remember it, I'm telling you what my impression was. I walked into my brother's room, my first software company, and we used to download software to a disk, go to the post office, mail a disk, call somebody saying, "Please put in my disk." Remember that stuff, the fun stuff?
Well, yeah.
I went to my brother and said, "What's this internet thing?" He says, "It's stupid." And I go, "Okay." And I went back to my office. And you know what? He was right. It was stupid. Because what was it? It was the yellow pages put onto a digital screen. And what it could do was stupid. It was like, you're selling books on the internet. I could just go, well, what? And the mistake we all made, and we consistently make, is that we fail to see exponentially what's going to happen to that, because we think linearly. And a lot of people have said this, Ray Kurzweil pushes this a lot. Here's the thing. It seems right on track to me that 95% of AI startups are going to fail. Seems right on track to me. 99% of, what was that? I could tell you, guys were like, many guys at the gym in 1998, they're like, "Hey man, we got this great company. It's a internet gem store. I'm like, what's an internet gem store? They're selling gems on the internet, and they have a store on the internet. I'm like, oh my God. And it's like 500 million in valuation. You got to buy some of the stock. And it was like public, gem.com or whatever it was. And it was all this frenzy and all this silliness, but it all sounded so good. Like it was irresistible. If I come to you and I say, I got this AI product that it just sounds mind blowing, but a lot of it's going to do the same thing. What I think is there is going to be a disproportionate amount of losers and very few incredible winners.
Right.
And who are the winners? Ones that literally go in and fix a business need and an enterprise isn't sticky. And here's something I want to say that I think people don't talk about. I'm going to come at you with the best new AI company with bang, 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 and I'm going to come to your enterprise, and you're a big bank, you're a big insurance company. I'm going to come solve your problem. You're going to be hit by a wall called compliance, legal, slow it down. You don't have this. Like, I don't care what your shit is. They're not going to just do it. Number two, we're 100,000 years old. You modern Homo sapiens are 100,000 years old, and we're not that much different than 100,000 years ago. So you can slam whatever AI you want into us. At the end of the day, we're blood, we're mainly water. We have the same peaks of oxytocin and everything else. And we're humans, and we're going to be slowed down by being humans. Like, give me an example. Give me the best AI in the world that's going to radically sell my house faster and better. I guarantee they're still going to want that real estate agent to look them in the eyes and hold their hand and say, but this is a good deal for you. And it sounds stupid, but most people are going to need that. And this robot tells me 3D prints a pill for you to take. And if you take this pill, it'll be perfect for your heart. They're going to want a doctor to sit next to them and hold their hand and say, Mr. Machine is correct, and you should take this pill that we've brought out of the machine. I still think we're human. I still think there's a force hitting against it. I think there's going to be, I think the AI bubble is coming. We haven't seen it yet. And I think you know this. I think we all know this. There's going to be a whole bunch of companies that run out of cash at crazy valuations. So, you've heard this rodeo. How many times have you heard this rodeo, right? You, three of us have been around for a while. We've seen this come and go up and, 5 years ago, we'll be doing this podcast, blockchain, right? Right? Comes and goes. This is different. It is better, AI than that. But at the end of the day, we're humans. There's going to be a lot of bloodshed. This seems like a normal tornado market to me. And there's going to be some extreme winners that we've never seen come out before. Some extreme winners, right? We've already seen some emerge, right? Like OpenAI, for example, right? And some others. And maybe some autonomous driving companies.
They haven't won yet.
They haven't won it. But look at Elon Musk yesterday. He says 80% of his value going forward is from Optimus, the robots. Now, he's a very good salesman, so I don't know. But at least he's saying what everybody's thinking about robotics, right?
Yeah, but to me, there's only one short-term winner out of all of it is NVIDIA.
Yes. Supplying pickaxes to miners.
The seven, but I'm making this up a little bit, but 70% of all of the venture dollars are ultimately ending up into the coffers of NVIDIA. And so
truly the winner.
That's pretty incredible, but everyone else is still trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing too is a lot of these companies are growing very fast, but they're operating in sometimes negative or break-even margins too.
Right? Negative gross margins?
Yeah.
Well,
you can make it up in volume. That's all.
You ever see the Saturday Night Live when they have this guy called the change bag? Because it's funny, they're like, you might wonder how we make money giving change. Volume. And it was like, that's it. Or the South Park, and it's gone, right?
We make pennies by selling dollars.
Pretty much.
Well, you look at also the M&A that's happening too, and you got to look at it. This is not a lot of cash exchanging hands. This is a lot of paper moving around. OpenAI just snapped up StatSig for $1.1 billion in all stock deal at its $300 billion valuation. And now they've just jumped their employee tender from $8 to $10 billion at a $500 billion valuation. So like the paper that's flowing around out there, it does have a bubble cachet to it.
It's all...
I wonder about these people that are turning down $100 or $200 million job offers at Meta. I don't understand that. Maybe I'm too old to get it, but I don't understand.
There's got to be such tight restrictions on clawbacks. I guess that's what I would think.
you can restrict me a lot of things.
Yeah,
If I was a young coder for 200 million, I'll
Yeah,
earn whatever
that's
you want to
insane.
earn. I mean, like, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? When you think about it, but there's a problem when people are like, 200 million ain't enough to come work for Meta.
Yeah.
I need 3. I mean, there's a problem, right? It's
Well,
kind
Yeah,
of crazy.
I mean,
Well,
Matt
we-
Friedman sells his venture fund to go work for Scale AI. Alex Swag, like that's obviously a lot of money.
Yeah.
But now he's a boss again. So people are
Yeah.
doing it
Yeah. Well,
lost
I
for a
mean,
few years.
just for a few years. That's what Michael's saying
And
he
how
would
old
do.
is he?
Yeah.
He's in his 20s or
Yeah. I want to get Michael's update on data stealth. Michael, how's it going? You're back in the operator's seat here. A lot of our listeners obviously followed your journeys from Blue Cat to everything else you've done. How's it feel being an operator again in this new age of building technology companies?
well, I'm an executive chairman, which means I'm an overbearing parent. I'm the CEO. The poor guy. It's great. We're hitting year 2 and owning the cybersecurity company. And it just reminds me of like what it's like to be back in battle and redoing messaging and talking to clients and visiting people and building again. What's really interesting about data stealth is it's growing beautifully and we've never taken on any money. It just keeps growing profitably, which is a rare thing in cybersecurity. But I really enjoy it. I love the team. We're an in-office company because we want humans to get together. So that's worked really well for us, by the way. And it's a lot of fun. I think at the end of the day, I realize that I'm not a great investor. I don't like Matt. I've seen you do amazing deals, and John too. I'm not like you. I don't think I'm a good investor because I'm too impatient and over the top. I think I'm better operator. So I find out that I get excited about operating and investing. Everything that I am is probably antithesis of what you need to be a good investor. So at least I found out what kind of animal I am. So I done some pretty good investments, but honestly, I think I like operating better than anything. I like being in the battle and like the trench. It's something
Michael,
You've done
uncomfortable.
an incredible job being an angel investor, Michael. Don't sell yourself short. You've had some pretty big home runs.
Yeah. But I mean,
but-
you know what? But isn't that funny? Because my home runs have been like, I couldn't see it. Like, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know. Right? Like, I knew, but I didn't know. Like, I thought, oh, well, this is going to be okay. Right? I couldn't see, like, you guys can see stuff better than I can. Like, I don't know what these people can turn things into. Like, and then, some of them were just pure luck. I mean, like, I did a lot of investment into Xanadu Quantum Computing in Toronto, and I consider them to be one of the most important tech companies in our country based on the intellectual property they have. And I think it's the most astounding stuff, published in Nature 4 times. But did I know that when I met Christian? I knew he was special. I knew he could do it, but I didn't know how important quantum is going to get. And you can see from the quantum stocks, right, that it's getting important. The market is smelling it's real. But what do I know? I don't. I find venture investing very difficult. I find it like what you do very difficult because picking winners, it's very. I find it's. You know what I say to people? I say, look, you got it. If you invest in a company, you got it ready for 10,000 copies and 10,000 copies in 10 years. And every time I do an investment, my family office stops me from getting into a lot of deals because they're like, you don't have time for 10,000 copies, right? And coffees at 10 at night on a Sunday. Like, you know what I mean by that, right? There's a lot of
Totally.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
for
believe in we see 10,000 companies a year, Michael. So yeah, it's really
I
freaking
mean,
hard.
I can't donate my time into it, but I mean, I want to, but it sucks me in, right? And I find it really, really hard. So we have, like in our family office, they say to me, look, will you write $1 million check into the company? I'm like, nah, probably not. So they make it so that I won't write $1 million check into the company, don't invest.
It's not worth
So
your time.
they make me stop all the time, right? Because a lot of these cocktail investing things get me in trouble because it's not the money so much. It's that it just sucks me down this time thing. And I love the entrepreneurs. I love the fight. I love the creative destruction lab. I love all these people and I love the war, but it's a lot, right? I mean, you live this more than I. You're the early stage and John's late stage PE, right? But I mean, it's just like, I find it incredibly difficult. Like, I don't know how you have a nose for it, but
Well, Michael, I think you just have it the reverse way. We're investors because we can't operate, so
That's
we
exactly
don't have
it.
that luxury. So
I can't stay concentrated on one thing at a time.
So that's the real reason. Great entrepreneurs, the greatest value to our country, in my view, is to be the entrepreneur, and we're just there as a support ecosystem around them, just to help them.
and on that, I wish as an entrepreneur, we recognized culturally that, you know, it's almost like in this country, and the dirty secret is this. They look at you, they point at you, and they say, go build something great. And you do, and then they tell you, you haven't paid enough taxes. You haven't paid your fair share. You're rich. You must be doing something wrong. You must be stealing it from somebody else's pocket. But you're like, but I created 500 jobs, and that's 500 people paying taxes and going to movies and going to restaurants and flying near Canada and going and paying you and hiring babysitters. Like, but they don't see it that way. They don't see it as in the contribution to the economy, why it's important, right? They see it as, but in America, don't you think the ethos is different? It's like, they see someone who's successful and they say, how'd you do it? That's great, man. Like, right? We have something a little bit backwards.
They sit at the top of the apex, and they are, I mean, some folks obviously are vilified more for their political beliefs, but there is a sense of still, you're successful, you work hard, and kudos to you, as opposed to, you must here have abused labor and you've extracted economic value that was accreting to someone else and you don't deserve it. It is a problem, and there's a deep undercurrent in this country. And, you know, I never saw it more pronounced when we had the whole debates around the capital gains taxes. And that's where you felt the absolute divide in this country.
Yeah, they said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a silly divide, because that means, what if Toby looked and never got his first couple of checks? You know, I mean, what would that have done to us, right?
We would have been the United States. In fact, that was the basis of when.
What about Elon?
Right.
Elon's lived on a lot of government subsidy, a lot of help, right? I mean, we don't get there. We don't get there alone. And no one says this. And the other thing is that if you take a look at the most incredible contributions to medical donations in this country, the hospitals, it comes from a very successful some places. You look at the Peter Monk a cardiac institute down here. That's no joke. My father was out there, and they saved his life 2 times. And I'm telling you, that was because of Peter, right? That was because of him.
Look at Peter Gilgan too, John.
Yep.
Every hospital, that's right. He's running out of hospitals to support.
But I mean, if you go to some of these places, I went to see Michael's, went up to the very top floor, and the real estate family, now it's escaping me, I'm embarrassed, but he built the entire top floor because it was the most beautiful thing that we would never build, you know? And I got to tell you, it's painful for me when I see this kind of push for a divide that doesn't need to exist. I can tell you so many people I know that have done well, that have contributed so much money to hospitals and to causes in this country. Anyways, it's a cultural thing. It's an ethos. So I think people should be Canadian, stay here, build here. But you know what? I think we should think American a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think we should lean in more. I think we should be tougher. I think we should be a little more like them. But live here and build here. I think we're an incredible country, right? We never have to apologize for it. On a bad day, we're a good country. Even in the worst of the Trudeau administration, we were a good country, right? It doesn't take a lot to make us great.
No.
It takes, you know, but it's, you have to work at it to bring us down to good, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to end it off. Thank you so much for jumping the tank to us today, Michael. And
Thanks,
John, as always, a pleasure.
Thanks, Mike.